I am 92 years old, and only recently did I begin to understand why my children stopped calling me. It took a long time for the quiet to make sense. At first, I thought it was ordinary distance. People get busy. Lives move forward. Children grow older, and their parents become smaller parts of their days. That's what I told myself. But when the phone stays silent for years, you begin to realize it isn't only busyness, it's something else. I live alone now in a small apartment on the second floor of a building that smells faintly of detergent and old carpet. The window in my living room faces a parking lot. In the mornings, I sit in a chair by that window and watch people start their day. Some of them have children walking beside them, small backpacks, quick steps. I notice things like that now I didn't used to. There are 5 numbers saved in my phone under the word family. 3 sons, 1 daughter, and the last number belongs to my youngest, though she hasn't answered in a long time. Sometimes I scroll past them. Sometimes I almost press one. But I usually don't. When you reach my age, you learn that silence can be a message. And once you understand what the message means, it feels wrong to interrupt it. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when the house was full. 4 children, all close enough in age that the kitchen was always noisy. Someone laughing, someone arguing, someone asking for something. Back then, the phone rang constantly. Teachers, friends' parents, my wife calling from the grocery store because she forgot something. It's strange how ordinary that all felt. Ordinary things rarely seem important while they're happening. You only notice their weight after they're gone. When I was young, I believed my job was simple. Work hard, provide, make sure my children had more than I did. I grew up in a house where money was always thin. My father worked long hours at a factory and still worried about the bills. I remember the look on his face when something unexpected happened. A broken appliance, a medical bill. I promised myself I wouldn't live like that. And I promised my children wouldn't either. So I worked. That became the center of my life before I even realized it had happened. In my 20s, I took a job at a construction company. Nothing glamorous, long hours, heavy work. But it paid well enough, and there was always more if you were willing to stay late. I was always willing. My wife used to wait for me at the kitchen table when I came home at night. Sometimes she would still be awake when I walked through the door, though her eyes were tired. "You missed dinner again?" she would say quietly. I'd apologize, but not with much thought behind it. I believed I was doing the right thing. Bills were paid. The children had clothes and food. That was what fathers were supposed to do. When our first son was born, I remember holding him in the hospital room and feeling something close to fear. He was small, fragile, and I thought about responsibility, the weight of it. From that day forward, every hour of work felt justified. Every late night had a reason. If my wife mentioned that I hadn't been home much, I would remind her how hard things were when I was growing up. I thought that explanation was enough. Looking back now, I realize I said that many times. Maybe too many. Children don't remember the electricity bill being paid. They remember whether you were at the dinner table. But I didn't understand that then. When the kids were young, there were small moments I missed. Little things, nothing dramatic. A school play here, a soccer game there. I always meant to attend the next one. There was always a next one. My wife would mention them when I got home. "She scored a goal today," she'd say about our daughter. "That's good," I'd reply, already thinking about work the next morning. I assumed I would see these things eventually. Children grow slowly when you're living with them. You think you have years. The truth is, they change faster than you notice. By the time I reached my 40s, the company had promoted me to a management position, better pay, more responsibility, even longer hours. By then it felt normal to leave before sunrise and return after dark. The children had grown used to it. Or maybe They had simply stopped expecting something different. I didn't ask. When they were teenagers, they started closing their bedroom doors more often. I thought it was normal. Teenagers want privacy, that's what people say. But sometimes late at night, I would walk past the hallway and notice the light under a door. Someone awake, someone living a life I wasn't part of. I told myself I would talk to them more on the weekend. Weekends came and went quickly. There were errands, repairs around the house, things that always seemed urgent. My wife used to watch me quietly while I worked on those things. Once I remember her saying something while I was fixing a cabinet hinge. "You know," she said, "they're growing up without you." I didn't answer right away. The screwdriver was still in my hand. I remember feeling irritated, not angry exactly, just defensive. "I'm doing this for them," I said. She didn't argue, she simply nodded. That moment stayed with me longer than I expected. Not because I thought she was right, but because of the way she stopped talking about it afterward. Silence can settle into a house slowly. You barely notice it happening. Years passed. One by one, the children left home, college, jobs, apartments in other cities. The house became quieter. At first, I thought it would feel peaceful. Instead, it felt unfamiliar. My wife and I would sit at the kitchen table in the evenings, sometimes without speaking for long stretches. We had spent so many years managing life together that we had forgotten how to simply live inside it. The children called occasionally back then, birthdays, holidays, short conversations. I often kept those calls brief. I had a habit of doing that, even after they were grown. "How's work?" I would ask. "How's everything going?" The conversations rarely lasted more than a few minutes. I didn't think much of it. I assumed we all preferred it that way. Looking back, I wonder if they were waiting for something else, something I didn't know how to give. The moment when everything changed didn't feel dramatic. There was no argument, no single event that ended things. It happened gradually. Calls became less frequent, visits shorter. Then there was a year when only one of them came home for the holidays. My wife tried to keep the traditions alive, cooking the same meals, setting the same number of chairs around the table, but empty chairs are difficult to ignore. I retired when I was 70. For the first time in 50 years, my days were empty. I remember waking up that first morning and realizing there was nowhere I needed to be. The quiet felt heavy. I thought retirement would bring the family closer again. I imagined visiting the children more often, maybe helping with grandchildren. There were 2 by then. I called my oldest son and suggested coming to see them. He hesitated before answering. "Things are busy right now, Dad," he said. "Maybe later." Later didn't come. My wife passed away 3 years after I retired. Cancer. It moved quickly. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and stale air. I remember sitting beside her bed while machines hummed softly. She was very thin by then. Near the end, she said something that I still think about. "They needed you," she whispered. Her voice was weak. For a long time. I knew who she meant, but I didn't know what to say. After she was gone, the house felt too large, too quiet. I sold it a year later. The children helped with the paperwork, but none of them stayed long. They had lives elsewhere. I moved into this apartment. At first, I believed things would improve once I had more time to reach out. But time alone doesn't rebuild relationships. It only reveals their absence more clearly. I tried calling the children more often. Sometimes they answered, sometimes they didn't. Conversations were polite, careful, short. Once, during a call with my daughter, there was a long pause. Then she said something I had never heard from her before. "You were never really there, Dad." Her voice wasn't angry. That's what made it harder to hear. Just tired. I tried to explain. I talked about work, about responsibility. about the things I believed I had done for them. She listened quietly. Then she said something simple. We didn't need more things. Another pause. We needed you. The call ended a few minutes later. I sat in my chair for a long time after that. It's strange how a sentence can stay in your mind for years. I replayed that conversation many times. At first I felt misunderstood. Then, slowly, I began to remember things. Small moments. A soccer game I promised to attend, a birthday dinner I arrived late for, a school event I skipped because work ran long. None of them seemed important at the time, but when you line them up across decades, they begin to form a pattern. Absence repeated often enough becomes its own kind of message. I think my children heard that message clearly, even when I didn't intend to send it. Now I'm 92. The days are quiet. I walk slowly to the grocery store once a week. I make simple meals. In the evenings, I sit by the window again. The parking lot fills and empties with other people's lives. Sometimes I imagine what it would have been like if I had chosen differently, if I had come home earlier, if I had listened longer, if I had sat at the dinner table without thinking about the next morning's work. But imagination doesn't change the past. It only makes it clearer. What is lost now cannot be recovered. Not the years, not the small moments, not the version of my children that existed when they still hoped I would show up. That version of them is gone. They are older now, busy, careful, distant. I don't blame them. It took me a long time to understand something simple. Children eventually stop asking for what they never receive, and when they stop asking, the silence begins. If you're listening to me now, I'm not speaking as someone who solved this problem. I'm speaking as someone who noticed it too late. For most of my life, I believed presents could be postponed, that there would always be another weekend, another conversation, another chance to sit down together. Time feels generous when you're young. At 92, it feels very precise, very limited. I'm not offering advice. I'm only telling you what it feels like to sit in a quiet room and realize how many ordinary evenings you traded away. Work gave me stability. It gave my family comfort, but it also took something I didn't notice disappearing. Attention, time, the small, forgettable hours that become memories later. Those hours are gone now, all of them. The phone rings occasionally. Usually wrong numbers, sometimes a doctor's office confirming an appointment, but not my children, not anymore. I understand why now. Understanding arrived late, but it arrived. Some nights I sit by the window and think about my wife's words in that hospital room. They needed you. She wasn't accusing me. She was simply stating something that had always been true. I wish I had understood that while there was still time to answer it. At 92, time is mostly memory, and memory doesn't allow revisions, only recognition. So I sit here most evenings and watch the lights in the parking lot flicker on one by one. People come home, doors closed, families settle into their nights. Somewhere inside those apartments, someone is probably sitting at a dinner table with their children, talking about small things, laughing about something ordinary. Those moments seem small when they happen, but they aren't. I know that now, and knowing it now is the quietest kind of regret.